Hello everyone, and welcome to this video bootcamp, I will say. I'm Matt Scott, and I'm the Global Community Manager for NASA's International Space Apps Challenge. And as you probably know, this weekend is the Space Apps COVID-19 Challenge, where people are creating solutions to problems related to COVID-19 using data from NASA and a number of agency partners. But something I think is so powerful about this hackathon that relates to my interviewee today is just that we're really focused on real world problem solving and developing solutions that make an impact. And one of our space app solutions, one of our global winners that has done that is Roland from Team SkyWatch, the best use of data winner for space apps in 2014. So without further ado, Roland, welcome to this conversation. Welcome to Space Apps again.
Well, thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to have you. And I would love to start out just by having you introduce yourself and also just introduce SkyWatch and what that is before we get into the history of SkyWatch, Space Apps, and you.
Okay, well, my background is as a software developer. I've got I'm dating myself, 35 years of experience now in software development. Worked for all kinds of companies in my career, like IBM and Sierra Systems, Critical Mass, and probably the highlight of my career before starting SkyWatch was working for MDA, which is the Canadian company that was responsible for the Canadarm. And that was pretty cool. I've always been kind of a space geek, always had a real interest in space. You know, I'm old enough that I saw the moon landing in '69, so that was pretty cool, and I think that was very inspiring for me as well.
That's good to know. And yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more about just how SkyWatch fits into that journey. And maybe I think a good place to start, because we could go through things in chronological order. Could you tell me a little bit more about, well, could you tell me a lot, I guess, about the start of SkyWatch, going back to Space Apps in 2014, and in particular, who was on your team and what you initially created at that hackathon?
Okay, so I came into the 2014 event really not knowing much about hackathons. It was the very first hackathon I'd ever participated in. I met two of the people that we eventually formed the SkyWatch group with. Would be James, who's currently the CEO, and Ryan, who is another developer who has since moved on. I met them the week before at a networking event in Toronto, in the tech community in Toronto, and so there was a little bit of familiarity there when I walked into the room. The way the organizers had set it up was that they had tables set up all over the room with the different challenges on tent cards on the different tables. So it really helped with the team formation. So basically, if you were interested in working on a certain challenge, you just sat at that table. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. I mean, like we were working on the alert challenge at the time. That's where the table was. Those two guys were sitting at it, and I recognized them from the networking event the week before. I was with my son Stefan, who at the time was just starting university, and the two of us sat down together with those two gentlemen, with James and Ryan, and another gentleman named Dexter, who's now currently the COO of the company. So. So yeah, that's how we started, and we basically sat together and brainstormed the challenge and came up with a solution. Talked to some NASA people about the data that we were using. The challenge was basically to aggregate astronomy data from space telescopes and make it accessible to people. And that's exactly what we did. We developed the prototype, and we're one of the two winners selected out of Toronto, and we thought, whoa, this is amazing, right? This is way better than we would have thought. And then about a month later, we were announced as one of the 5 finalists. And we're going, oh boy, this is getting pretty exciting, right? So, and then when we were announced as global winners, we were absolutely blown away. I mean, we were very proud of what we developed, and we thought we had a good solution, but I mean, like, it just surprised the hell out of us. It really did.
Right.
And it was really awesome. And it was after that that we kind of got together. You know, we had a little bit of a meeting, and the five of us, and said, you know, we think that there's a really good opportunity here, right? Because the state of satellite data at the time, and to a large extent it still is, you know, it was very siloed, very disparate, a lot of different formats, a lot of different ways of organizing the data. And you know, unless you were a researcher or a GIS expert in terms of Earth observation data, this stuff was really, really hard to get at. And we just wanted to make that data more accessible, and saw the business opportunity, and we incorporated. We formed a company. SkyWatch Space Applications. You know, unfortunately, my son couldn't participate because, as I said, he was just starting university.
Mm-hmm.
He's almost got his degree now. That's how far we've come. He's almost done. And so then the four of us started down this journey. You know, unfortunately, one of the original partners, Ryan, he left after about a year. So it's just the three of us now. James is the CEO, and Assistant Dexter's the COO, and I'm a staff platform engineer. So I'm one of the lead developers developing our Earth observation aggregation applications.
Wow. That's
So
powerful. It's powerful, and just to jump in there, it's interesting because something that I often tell people, I encourage people to find teammates, you know, beforehand if they can for space apps, and you know, maybe reach out to their friends, others who might be a good fit for their solution. And I see that happen a lot. But also, we have so many participants, especially now with this all virtual hackathon, who are meeting each other for the first time, really in similarly serendipitous ways. And it's actually kind of mind-blowing to think that you've gone from, you went from sitting at a table with a bunch of people who just happen to be interested in developing the same solution, to so many years later having a company that you know, for the most part, the team is still intact, and I'm sure your son will be part of the team sooner or later once he's done with his degree. But you know, a question I have for you, you mentioned a couple of things. So out of Space Apps Weekend, like all participants, you develop a prototype, and you know, it's not that fully functional solution yet. And so you mentioned that you saw the business case for your solution. Could you talk me through that? Because right now, when a lot of people are probably seeing this is at the end of the hackathon or shortly after the hackathon for them. So like what were the steps for you to understand that this was a viable business?
well, I mean, we were looking at, I guess, well, first of all, NASA proposed the challenge. So obviously there was a problem that needed to be solved, right? Now, there are lots of problems that can be solved that will make nobody any money, right? And I mean, you kind of have to really kind of sit back and think, you know, who would benefit from, you know, in our case, making this data more accessible? Well, I mean, as I said, we started originally with the astronomy data from space telescopes. And so we were kind of going, well, you're looking at, you know, government organizations, educational institutions, researchers, and so on, that would have a lot easier time of things if they didn't have to figure out how to decompose an HDF file, for example, which is one of the formats you find this data in, and just get it in an easily accessible and ingestible way. And we kind of went down the path, kind of thinking, yes, we could make money on this, but about a year into it, we pivoted away from astronomy data and went towards Earth observation data, mostly for financial reasons, right? I mean, part of the issue with the astronomy market is that it's very grant driven, right? And these grants can take 12, 18 months to get approved, right? So, you know, for a small startup struggling to survive on on basically, you know, bootstrapping from your friends and family, and a couple of government grants that we qualified for. You know, it really wasn't a solid business case, and we pivoted to Earth observation data because the problems were virtually identical in terms of how disparate and siloed the data was, and how inaccessible it was, and how expensive it can be to get too. Cost is a very strong consideration with Earth observation data, but there are a lot more uses for it, and people are willing to pay for it. As when we started researching the market, is what we did. So we pivoted away from astronomy, and went into Earth observation, and developed our Earth cache platform on that premise. And I think our success so far has basically validated that we made the right move. And yeah, I mean, like, it's been kind of going upwards in the right direction ever since.
Yeah. One thing that's really fascinating to me is that you've stayed involved with space apps, which I think is definitely an underreported story for a lot of the global winners who get involved as mentors or even as local leads. But SkyWatch is still, you know, bringing space apps to life. And something that was really cool for me actually last year was meeting the global winning team, which happened to be from SkyWatch, or, you know, from the SkyWatch event too. And so I think that, you know, it's powerful to see that you're contributing back to the community. I wonder though, is there anything in particular that you're learning from just engaging with the community, or that in particular when it just comes to getting them to follow that entrepreneurial path? Are you seeing others, you know, follow in your footsteps? What does that look like from your perspective?
I have been asked this question quite a bit. I mean, like, you know, the event that we host in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, I think in terms of registrants was the second largest in the world last fall. So we have a lot, hundreds of people coming through our event, and we do get asked this all the time. I think first of all, you really need to understand if your solution, you know, if there's a viable business case for it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you kind of have to think back and think about, okay, well, if I solve this problem, what's the market? Who's going to pay for it, right? And then I think if you have some sort of an idea that it's viable from a business perspective, the next thing that I would recommend is that you try to get involved with like an accelerator or an incubator, because that's what we did early on for us. We shortly after we formed the company, we applied for and were accepted into the Google for Entrepreneurs program in Waterloo, and that really helped us kind of focus on what we needed to do and what we needed to develop, and help us build out our business plan. And then also, and it didn't stop there, because we also went through Creative Destruction Lab, which is another accelerator, and we did that in Toronto, and then finally in late 2016 we were accepted into Techstars New York. So James and Dexter moved to New York for a couple of months, and I stayed back and wrote code, and that really solidified things for us. At that point, we'd already pivoted to Earth observation, so they helped us really define that market and put that business case together and deliver a solution that would help with or that would make money, basically, right? I mean, like, in the end, it has to be financially viable. I mean, investors aren't going to invest in your company if they don't think you're never going to make money, mm-hmm. right? And that's really what it boils down to.
Right. And
so getting back to your question, I'm sorry, I kind of went on a bit of a tangent there. You really got to think, okay, this is an awesome solution. Who would buy it? And I think that's the fundamental question that you need to answer first, mm-hmm. before you kind of go off and form a company and build out the solution. Because I mean, admittedly, what you submit for this hackathon is just a prototype. I mean, like, you know, the astronomy data that we got it was just a fixed data set that one of the NASA guys who runs the network gave us.
Mhm.
And we just basically built a prototype on top of a fixed data set. And you know, it really, it looked good, but it wasn't functional, right? And you know, you have to be able to scope what you can do in 2 days and present something that really drives home what your app is all about.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a powerful piece of advice for people who are looking at watching this video and looking at you and thinking, how can I get from where I am now to maybe not where you are, because maybe that's not their journey, but you know, the equivalent for them, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
But you know, one thing that I would just love to touch on before coming back to any advice that you have for participants, could you share just what have some of those highlights been for you along the journey since Space Apps?
Oh boy, there are a lot of them. I mean, like, as you know, as you could, it's pretty obvious that Space Apps was very much a turning point for me in my career. And the path that we've gone down since. I mean, you know, I had a real job at the time, and I worked on SkyWatch evenings and weekends at the beginning. Um, you know, for the first year and a half or so, and you know, I have to credit my co-founders, you know, for that flexibility, and in allowing me to do that. Um, and that was hard work. I mean, like, it's one thing. It's not easy building a business. That's for sure.
Mhm.
And it was hard work. You know, I spent a lot of evenings and weekends, you know, above and beyond, and took time away from my family and other things that I enjoy doing to help build this. Um, that was something I won't soon forget. That you know, building a business is hard work.
Right.
Um, and the other thing that was kind of a highlight for me was when I finally decided to take the plunge and start working on SkyWatch full time, you know, with the other co-founders, uh, and that's a big step. That's a big step for anybody, especially someone who's had a long career in software development. It's, you know, it's a risk financially,
Mhm.
and it's a sacrifice too, because you know, I worked for the founders discount for the longest time, and uh, you know, but we built the business. We were able to attract investment, and things are going well now, and it was all worth it. I mean, I think I grew personally quite a bit. I learned a lot about um, you know, about tech, about the satellite business, about business in general, right? Because, you know, I was a software dev working for all these big companies, and you know, I really didn't have much exposure to how a business actually worked and the things that you needed to think about, and going through this really helped me develop kind of that end of uh, of my experience, and it was very eye opening, very eye opening. You know,
Yeah.
I thought I knew a lot going in, and I really didn't know that much.
Yeah, yeah, and it brings up a great question that I just thought of, but I know that a lot of people will look back and have, you know, advice that they would have given, what they wish they would have known at the time, and so I think you're in a unique position because obviously you have the perspective of achieving what you've achieved now, but you're speaking to the Space Apps community, and so is there anything that you wished you know you would have known then that you know now, or that you
um,
would have done then that you would do?
I I mean, there were two things that I really struggled with, and I'm kind of glad that I made the decisions that I did. One was accepting the risk.
Mhm.
You know, at a couple of points in this, in terms of starting the thing in the first place, and then making the decision to go full time. Um, and you're kind of balancing the risk with the work. Another thing that I learned is it's good to focus on the stuff that you know and can do well, because
Mhm.
that will ultimately help the business grow.
Mhm.
Um, because you have a certain skill set, you have certain talents, And you need to be able to do those things at the best of your ability, as well as work hard, to be able to enable the business to grow. You know, if you kind of get into things that you don't know so much about, you know, that's kind of where the mistakes happen. And I think one of the things that I think really worked well with initially the four of us and now the three of us as we started the company was that we all knew what our strengths and weaknesses were, and we all applied those, and those things kind of meshed together in terms of helping to build the company and help grow the company. Now, what would I tell myself? I think it's just, you know, just be prepared. It's going to be a slog. I mean, I think I might have thought that, hey, you know, this is going to be fun. This is going to be a lot of, you know, it's going to be pretty exciting. I'm going to be a co-owner of a business, you know, after having working for other people for over 30 years. And I thought this is going to be really cool. This is always something I wanted to do. But I think I would have said, you know, but it's going to be a lot of work, and be prepared.
That's powerful advice, and it's good that you could share that, and people could start to understand what that journey looks like. And I think it is really important, and I'm thankful that you shared just the challenges also that come with it, and that it's not a walk in the park, but it is a lot of work. And so even though it is possible, there are just a lot of things to consider. And you even mentioned earlier, you know, working full time while also working nights and weekends on SkyWatch. And so I hope people appreciate that. Again, it does take a lot of work, but it is possible. And just one last question I have before final thoughts or pieces of wisdom that you might have to share with the community. First and foremost, what advice would you have for someone who's participating this weekend in our first all virtual hackathon, for them to make the most out of their space apps experience?
First of all, don't get too stressed out. Have fun. You know, you're doing something that's totally different. I mean, you're working with stuff from NASA, which is cool in the first place, right? The second thing is really try to define the scope of what you're trying to deliver. The challenges are usually pretty broadly worded, and if you try to swallow the thing whole, you won't be able to deliver anything. I mean, it really work hard at the beginning to define the scope of what you're trying to deliver, and then don't get too focused on building out the perfect solution. It's a prototype, right? You've only got 48 hours. Put a couple of really nice web pages together. Demonstrate the technology that you would develop. So in other words, if you're doing data mining or machine learning or whatever, you're going to have to demonstrate that you're actually developing or doing some sort of technology. But it doesn't have to work perfectly, right? I mean, our app didn't work perfectly. I mean, like, but it looked good, and that's an important part of it. You have to demonstrate that your solution is going to fly, even though you know the back end of it maybe isn't fully functional. Then, and I mean, like in our case, because you know, it was still the live thing. We had our presentation that we had to worry about. I believe now the participants have to do a short video before they submit their solutions tomorrow. Make sure that you leave yourself enough time to put together a really kick-ass presentation, because you think about it, the judges are going to be looking at hundreds of these videos, and your video has to stand out. It has to stand out. So take the time to develop, you know, really good looking slides, a really nice looking presentation. You know, if you're going to incorporate a demo, make sure you make a good video of that demo. I mean, like when we did it, and in past space apps, you would do your demonstration live. And I would always recommend to the participants that you should make a video of your demo anyway, in case something screws up while you're doing it live, because then you can just press play and you've still got something to show. Because right. You know, you only got 5 minutes to do your presentation. So, and here you've only got a 30-second video. So leave yourself enough time. Basically by noon tomorrow, if you haven't started working on your presentation, start working on it, right? Because you need the time to put together a really good presentation.
Yeah, and I'll also just add the thing that's one thing that's different about this COVID hackathon, other than of course participants don't have the benefit of presenting in person in addition to their videos. But for this hackathon, we're accepting not just videos, but people could submit a video if they'd like, a 30-second video. They could submit screenshots or slides. So there's flexibility also in terms of how people tell the story of their work. So maybe they're not a video editor, but that's okay, and we're also open to that. If you have screenshots that you're able to share or a great presentation, but you really hit the nail on the head that whatever it is that you submit with your solution, really to make sure that it's polished and tells the story of your work is important, because that's what's happening at Space Apps, and that's something that I've heard from a number of global winners, that so much of their success at Space Apps has just come through being able to tell the story of their work in a way that appeals to the judges, in a way that appeals to NASA, the challenge owners who created the challenge in the first place. And I think that's a lot of really great advice that you shared. But just even like, I sort of want to give you the floor as we wrap up this interview, because I'm sure there are a lot of other pieces we could touch on. But is there any advice or anything you want to share with the community to close us out?
Keep in mind that the opportunity to work with this kind of data, well, up until now, has only come up once a year. And the fact now that we've got this extra hackathon this year, I think is really cool, because I think any time that you can look at data that's collected from space, it just really gets the imagination flowing, and the possibilities become endless. And I mean, that's kind of the way that I felt, growing up, witnessing the space race, and then being able to actually touch this stuff, I thought was just really, really cool. So then it kind of gives you a little bit of an insight as to how NASA works too, and how they organize and collect things, and I think that's really cool as well. So yeah, like as I said before, don't forget to have fun, and enjoy the time with your partners and your teammates.
Yeah, I do want to actually ask one bonus question that I wasn't planning on, but just specifically about what it's, being a global winner and the impact that it has. A lot of what you were saying points to the fact that a lot of success at Space Apps, or I'll say success at Space Apps, if your goal is to win, rather than just develop your skills and build something and have a great time, is, being able to put in a lot of work and, tell your story. There are a lot of great tips here, but I wonder, like, what impact does it have to be a global winner? I want to provide people with motivation to put even more time into their solutions to hopefully get to that point.
It's one thing that I haven't touched on, but the prize is absolutely phenomenal. I understand we're kind of in different times, but being able to go down to Kennedy and to witness a launch from basically the VIP area. We were on the causeway to see the Orion test launch is what we got to see. That is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, if you've never witnessed a launch live, that alone is just worth the price of admission, really, and all the hard work. Even though even though you have to kind of pay your own way to get down there, and I don't want to disparage that, because once you're down there, the access that you get is phenomenal. You would never get it if you just walked up to Kennedy Space Center and wanted to go visit the place. It's an experience that me and my family will never forget. We took everybody down there. The four of us went down, and it was just an absolutely phenomenal experience. We loved it. and being able to witness a launch live, it's just second. There's no better experience. It's just absolutely incredible. So I mean, so if you're motivated to win the hackathon, to be able to get that chance, I mean, it's well worth it, and it's well worth all the hard work.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, of course, the launch will, and we keep sharing this with folks, that of course the launch is still the plan, to go to a NASA center and see that launch take place. And of course that will happen once it's safe to travel again. But I'm still looking forward to that whenever it's taking place. And the other thing that's a cool prize that I think could lead to even more companies like yours is just that we, as one award for a number of the not only winners who are eligible, but also finalists, we will be integrating solutions into the Euro Data Cube, which will help scale up solutions. And really it'll be powerful to see what impact that has on the finalists and winners who do have the chance to benefit from that. But thank you so much for taking the time out and for helping paint the picture of what life after space apps could look like. But again, I'll give it back to you one more time to just close us out with any wisdom, words, motivation, or anything from you and the SkyWatch team that you want to share.
I don't know what else I could say. I'll come back to it again. Don't forget to have fun. I mean, yes, it can be stressful. You're under really tight timelines, but don't forget to have fun and keep your mind open. You never know what could come afterwards.
Mm-hmm.